Welcome to the show, friends. You're tuned to KDCR, New York, Distinguished Comics Radio. And this is our 9th broadcast, Wednesday night, July 24th, 1940. I'm Simon Carver, and tonight I have the pleasure of saying something I've been wanting to say for months. For the first time on this program, all three of our regular voices are finally in the same room together.
Robert Reed here, happy as a kid with a fresh dime at the corner stand. Simon, I'll tell you, it took us 9 episodes to get the whole infield assembled, but here we are. Chicago in the booth, Cubs spirit in the heart, and enough funny books on this table to buckle a railroad trestle.
George Wilson, present and accounted for. I had to shove aside 3 stacks of comics and 1 ashtray just to find my chair. So if this sounds historic, that's because it cost us some floor space.
It did. And outside this little studio, the world has not exactly chosen a restful week. Just 6 days ago, on July 18th, Franklin Roosevelt accepted a nomination for a 3rd term and said, "My conscience will not let me turn my back upon a call to service." Over in Europe, the Battle of Britain has begun in earnest since July 10th. Planes over the channel, raids on the coast, every newspaper map looking grimmer by the day. And only yesterday, July 23rd, the Wells Declaration laid down that the United States would not recognize the Soviet annexation of the Baltic states. So the air, even here, feels charged.
July 10th. I'm not going to forget that date. Battle of Britain starts, and all of a sudden, every story about airfields, sabotage, or secret weapons in these comics lands a little harder. You can feel how close modern machinery sits to panic.
And when the headlines are heavy, folks reach for stories where a fella can still put his shoulder into the gears and straighten things out. Superman lifting, Batman stalking, Sandman slipping in through the window. Same appetite, different hats. That's why tonight feels right.
Exactly. We're stepping out of the regular reading order for one evening and holding our first annual in spirit, if not yet in arithmetic, Distinguished Comics Radio Awards show. We're looking back over episodes 3 through 8, Superman's expansion through 1939, Dr. Occult in the shadows before the Cape boom, Batman's first astonishing sprint through Detective Comics 27 to 34, Slam Bradley as the magazine's hard-boiled foundation, Sandman in Adventure 40 through 45, and The World's Fair Book, and Sandy Keene over on the short band side of the dial.
We got trophies too, invisible ones, which is better for the budget. We're calling them the Dizzies. And if you ask me, that's a peach of a name. Sounds half honor, half dizziness from reading too many comics under a porch light.
And because we're civilized men, more or less, we're not just going to shout favorites across the room till dawn. We'll vote, quietly, on paper, like a parish committee with worse handwriting and better costumes.
That's the shape of it. 5 main categories tonight, 1 special salute for the almost winners, and then our biggest prize, Story of the Year. So settle in, friends. We're not just reviewing old ground. We're taking stock of a year that pushed comics from experiment toward identity. Before we start engraving imaginary brass, let's explain the rules. We have spent the better part of this year tracing how these books grew in 1939. Superman becoming a line unto himself. Batman arriving like a black knife in Detective Comics. Sandman proving atmosphere could sell beside fists. And the earlier strips, Slam Bradley, Dr. Occult, Sandy Keene, showing the workshop where the whole house got built. Tonight is a pause to ask the simplest question there is. What was best?
Best according to 3 grown men with pencils, which is the most scientific system yet devised west of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. We got 5 categories: Best Writer, Best Artist, Best Hero, Best Supporting Character, and Story of the Year. Then, a little tip of the cap to the fellows and gals who didn't make the big board, but still mattered.
And we're scoring it proper. First place gets 10 points. Second gets 7. Third gets 5. Fourth gets 3. Fifth gets 1. Anything below 5th gets a sad handshake and no points at all. That scoring matters because a unanimous second-place finisher can still make the leader sweat.
George, you grabbed the numbers exactly. 10, 7, 5, 3, 1. That's what we're using for every ranked ballot tonight. And what I like about that spread is it rewards conviction. First place is not just a polite nod, it's a declaration.
Right. 10 points means you don't just admire the work. You think it defined the field. 7 says strong runner-up. 5 says solid medal stand. 3 and 1 mean, I see your case, but I'm not marrying it.
That's the Catholic version of mathematics, George. Me, I'm simpler. First place is the fellow you want riding in the sidecar. Fifth place is the fellow you'd still invite to the picnic.
There's one more bit of pageantry we ought to establish. For each category, we're going to talk through the nominees first. Make the case, push back, argue a little. Then, on the air, each of us will quietly write down our rankings. We will not read them aloud while writing. That would spoil the horse race.
I already don't trust Simon. He's got the face of a man who'd peek at another ballot if there was a mirror handy.
I object to the slander. I'm an award-winning library reporter, Robert. There are standards.
Small award.
Small award, yes, but honestly won. So that's the spirit tonight, affectionate combat. Nobody here is trying to sink anybody else's favorite. We're trying to pin down what made 1939 feel different. Why these strips started sticking in the mind. Why a cover like Detective Comics 27 or Action Comics 13 feels less like a pamphlet and more like a turning point.
And I like that we're doing it now, in July of 40, because you can already feel next year's comics getting bigger bones, more confidence, cleaner hooks, stronger villains. Looking back at 39 now is like standing on the curb after the parade and seeing which float folks keep talking about.
Which means we should get to the first category before Robert starts awarding a dizzy to his own metaphors.
Fair enough. Pencils ready, gentlemen. Best writer. If this category has a frontrunner, it's Jerry Siegel. And I don't say that just because Superman is the loudest success on the board. I say it because Siegel writes with a kind of moral velocity. His plots can be sketched in one line: a crooked lobbyist, a mine owner cutting corners, a cab racket crushing independence, an epidemic spreading panic. But on the page, they move like they've been shot from a gun.
That's it exactly. He doesn't loaf. In Action Comics number 2, it's arms dealers and a phony war in San Monte. In number 3, it's miners trapped underground because a boss values profits over shoring up the tunnel. In number 5, a dam's cracking, and Lois is in a car getting swept to Kingdom Come. He takes bread and butter injustices and turns them into headline melodrama. Real American stuff. Bosses, crooked politicians, unsafe jobs, neighborhoods in danger. Black and white, good and bad. I love it.
But black and white is part of why some people might hold back. The villains can be broad. A munitions man isn't just greedy, he's greed with eyebrows. A mine owner isn't conflicted. He's practically wearing a sign that says, I hate workers.
Sure, but that's the point. He's writing for speed. He's not painting an oil portrait. He's marching a band down State Street.
And I'd add that the simplicity is strategic, not careless. Siegel came up through science fiction fandom. He put out cosmic stories in 1929, took rejections from pulp magazines, wrote The Reign of the Superman back in 1933, before the heroic version fully took shape. That fan magazine energy never quite leaves him. Every Superman story asks, what if one impossible man crashed into an ordinary social wrong?
The thing I keep coming back to is the phrase from Action 1, champion of the oppressed. That's the whole engine. Not conqueror, not king, not policeman in tights. Oppressed. Once you say that, the targets choose themselves. Abusive husbands, crooked senators, exploitative businessmen, people turning public systems into private gain.
Champion of the oppressed. That line is the token I can't shake either. It explains why even when Siegel is clumsy, he never feels cold. The stories are animated by a moral preference. Somebody weak is being leaned on, and he wants to reverse the pressure.
And he writes Superman like a fellow who solves things in public. That matters. Batman creeps. Sandman arranges. Superman barges in. Governor's Mansion in Action 1. Factory floors. Streets full of plague panic in Action 19. He shows himself. Like Superman saying, no, pal, you're going to feel the heat of being wrong right in daylight.
I'll give Siegel another point. He makes Lois Lane matter immediately. Action 1, she's at the dance hall. Action 2, she's facing a firing squad in San Monte. Action 5, she's in the flood. He doesn't just hand Clark a desk and call it characterization. He builds a social world around him.
And by the time we get to Superman number 2, the Larry Trent boxing comeback, the peace championing international plot, the expanding confidence of the solo title, you can hear a writer who understands not just a hero, but a tone. Urgent, reform-minded, weirdly hopeful. So yes, gentlemen, Jerry Siegel is a formidable candidate.
I ain't saying where I'm ranking him yet, but let's just say his pencil's already warm in my mind.
Now, if Siegel is the populist thunderclap, Gardner Fox is range. We've seen him all over the map already. Batman stories in Detective Comics, Sandman stories in Adventure, pulpy structures that can hold hypnosis 1 month and industrial sabotage the next. Fox doesn't always give you the emotional, blunt force Siegel does, but he's awfully good at construction.
Construction is the word. Fox knows how to lay track. Detective 31 moves from Julie Madison's strange behavior to the ocean voyage, to the monk's castle, to the giant gorilla and the bat plane, without the thing collapsing under its own foolishness. Sandman at the World's Fair does the same trick with stolen plans, a boat pursuit, and industrial sabotage. He can stack pulp contraptions neatly.
And Fox likes gadgets and systems. You can feel it. Sandman's gas gun, Batman's bat plane and autogyro business, hidden laboratories, strange formulas. He writes like a fella opening the hood on a machine and saying, "Now hold on, there's one more compartment."
Then there's Bill Finger, who is tougher to separate because his name is not always blazing from the marquee, but the Batman material bears his fingerprints all over it, if you'll forgive the obvious pun. The darker costume refinements, the detective flavor, the little touches of gothic atmosphere, the idea that Bruce Wayne's grief matters, not just his fists.
Detective Comics 33 is the evidence for me. That origin isn't just plot. A boy sees his parents murdered, kneels by them, vows war on crime, trains his body, and then the bat through the window gives him an image to live inside. That's not just structure. That's myth-making. And myth with a wound in it.
Yeah, and Batman's no sunshine kid after that. You get why he's in the dark. You get why he scares people. It ain't arbitrary. It's grief with a motor in it.
Before we mark ballots, let's salute the supporting nominees. Mart Bailey handled 2 issues of Slam Bradley, and while he's not likely to crack the top tier, he helped keep that rough and tumble strip alive. Burt Chrisman, who we'll talk about more in Best Artist, also deserves a writer's nod for several Sandman efforts. Clean, efficient, moody. But I think we all know this race centers on Siegel, Fox, and Finger.
All right then. Heads down, pencils up. Quiet ballots, boys. 1st through 5th. 10, 7, 5, 3, 1. Don't be peeking, Simon.
I fold my paper like a confession slip. Nobody's seeing mine till the count.
And pencils down. I have the totals. 3rd place in Best Writer with 17 points, Gardner Fox. Strong showing, lots of breadth, but not enough first place thunder.
17. That's a sturdy number. Means all 3 of us respected the workmanship, even if he didn't own the room.
2nd place with 22 points, Bill Finger. A very serious challenge. 1 first place vote, 2 other ballots keeping him high, and the Batman material carrying enormous weight.
22. That's not honorable mention. That's one more lucky bounce and he steals the pennant.
Which leaves our champion. With 27 points, your first dizzy for Best Writer goes to Jerry Siegel.
Attaboy, Jerry. Champion of the oppressed and champion of the typewriter, too.
Best Artist begins, for me, with Joe Shuster. Not because every early Superman page is polished. Some are rough, some are plainly rushed. But because nobody in this field draws motion with more conviction. He makes Superman feel like a force crossing a room, not a man standing in costume waiting his turn.
Yeah, he draws him like a fastball. Action 13. That cab racket story? We've got Superman running along rooftops, crashing into racketeers, hauling men out of cars, then leaping clear while the cape snaps behind him. And in Action 19, with the Purple Plague, even when the scene is doctors and hospital beds, he keeps the figure alive. Superman's always entering from somewhere, always landing, lifting, lunging.
What I notice is how elastic his cities are. Metropolis, or the Daily Star City, depending which early issue you're in, doesn't feel mapped the way later crime comics do. It feels built to be vaulted over. Fire escapes, window ledges, tenement roofs, bridges, dams, laboratory skylights. Urban space becomes a springboard under Schuster.
Elastic is a perfect word. He bends the ordinary city around the hero's momentum. And he's good with faces, too, in a broad, newspaper-stripped way. Lois can go from scorn to fear to admiration in 3 panels. Crooks blanch. Editors bark. Professor Traver in Action 19 looks exactly like a nervous, overreaching scientist ought to look. Spectacles, strain, too much brain and not enough conscience.
And think about the line from where he started. Joe Shuster was a Toronto kid working as a newspaper boy for the Toronto Daily Star, scavenging discarded paper, wallpaper scraps and whatnot, if his own recollections to be trusted. That homemade quality is still in the pages, but by the time you get from Action 1 to Superman 1 and 2, the confidence is way up. Bigger splashes, cleaner silhouettes, better staging.
I'm never going to forget the improvement from those earliest cramped pages to the Superman #1 package. The revised origin breathes more. Krypton has architecture. The Kents feel human. Clark's body language sells the disguise. That's not just more pages, that's more control.
And his action iconography is almost genre-defining already. The car overhead in Action 1, the train in Action 13, the giant mechanical threat in Action 19. Even before flight becomes the full-time mode, his leaping figure is unmistakable. Chest forward, cape thrown, fists set. A whole new pictorial grammar is arriving on cheap paper.
And I got a soft spot for how American it all feels. Strongman body, clean jaw, circus color, but dropped into cities and factories and governors' offices. It's not fancy illustration, it's working illustration. Like a shop foreman who suddenly learned to draw miracles.
That may be the best case for Schuster in one line. He draws miracles like they belong in the morning paper. A powerful contender for the dizzy.
Now if Schuster owns momentum, Bob Kane owns silhouette. Batman's first year works because before you understand the man, you understand the shape. Detective 27's cover, May 1939, already has it. The black wings, the cowl ears, the body carried between flight and fall. Later, in Detective 31 and 33, Kane gives you castles, autogyros, moonlit roofs, giant bats of cape cloth, and a figure who can dominate a page just by standing in a doorway.
Yes, Batman as design object. Kane's pages can be crude in places, even ungainly, but the theatrical instinct is strong. He understands black shape against yellow moon. He understands how a cape can become architecture. In the Monk Saga, Detective 31 and 32, the hero often reads first as a moving blot of shadow, and only second as a man.
That's a heck of a trick. Schuster says, "Here comes the train." Kane says, "Here comes the nightmare." And both work. But I'll tell you, Kane's got maybe the sharpest cover identity in the game. One glance and a newsboy can bark, "The Batman!" without even squinting.
Then, Bert Chrisman. On Sandman, especially Adventure 40 and the World's Fair material, Chrisman gives us crisp storytelling and mood without clutter. The gas mask, the fedora, the cape, those are all silhouette dependent too, but handled differently. Less gothic opera than Batman, more industrial hush.
Chrisman is economical. He can stage a room so that one doorway, one lamp, and one looming figure do the whole job. Sandman at the World's Fair is a good example. Stolen plans, boats, fair architecture. Hidden movement. The pages don't sprawl, they click. That's craftsmanship.
And we ought to say a word for Mart Bailey and Craig Flessel. Bailey's no favorite for the cup, but he keeps Slam Bradley readable and punchy in his turns at bat. Flessel on early Sandman gives you some nice, strong compositions too, even if he only had a couple issues in our range.
All right, quiet ballots again, gentlemen. First through fifth. Best artist. George, you're hunching over that paper like it's a carburetor blueprint.
Because unlike a carburetor, this can actually start a fight.
Pencils down before George starts adjusting the fuel mix. Let's hear it.
Third place, with 17 points, Bert Christman. A very respectable finish and proof that mood and clarity carry weight.
17 means he didn't just sneak onto ballots. He sat there comfortably.
Second place, this is close, with 24 points, Bob Kane.
24! See, that's what I mean. Sharp as a tack, that Batman look. He nearly swiped it.
But our winner, by a single point, with 25. Joe Shuster takes the Dizzy for Best Artist.
1 point. That's a pennant race, Simon. Schuster by the nose. I like it.
By 1 point, yes. Which means if anybody listening thinks Kane was robbed, they're not crazy. But the trophy goes to the man who made a city bounce under a cape.
Best Hero begins where Best Writer and Best Artist both just began, with Superman. Not merely because he is the most successful, but because he is the year's defining answer to a simple fantasy. What if power served the public?
Amen. He ain't a king. He ain't a masked sadist. He's public service with shoulders. Action 2, he stops a fake war cooked up by munitions men. Action 3, he drags a mine owner through his own unsafe tunnels till the man agrees to install real safety. Action 5, he fights a flood. Action 13, he breaks a cab racket. Action 19, he races around a city hit by the Purple Plague. That's a heck of a resume.
Let me sharpen that. The list itself: war profiteers, mine bosses, corrupt transit rackets, epidemics. That's what makes him special. He's not just strong, he's pointed at civic failure. The heroism isn't only in the lifting, it's in the target selection.
Target selection, yes, that's the phrase. Plenty of heroes can punch. Superman's stories ask who deserves punching, or terrifying, or exposing, or saving. And the answers are remarkably social for a boy's adventure strip.
Though I'll push back on one thing, Simon. You're leaning so hard on the social mission, you risk missing the daylight certainty. Kids love him because he's clear. Red and blue, chest out. No doubt what side he's on. In these muddy times, certainty's worth a lot.
I don't disagree. I just think the certainty would ring hollow if the missions were empty. If he were only toppling generic crooks, he'd still be fun. But because he topples systems, crooked lobbies, exploitative bosses, fear itself in the Plague story, he becomes more than a circus act.
Robert's right on the icon, though. Action 13's cover, June 39. Superman bracing against that red train over water, coattails and cape whipping. Another thrilling issue of Superman. That's an argument in one picture. The hero is visible, spectacular, public. Batman would hide in the roof beams. Superman grabs the locomotive where everybody can see.
That's the American way, pal. If a bridge is falling, don't whisper about it. Hold it up. If a sickness is spreading, don't hand out calling cards. Bring the antidote. If a racket's squeezing the little guy, tear the roof off the joint.
And yet, there's gentleness in him too, which matters. Superman number 2's Larry Trent boxing story isn't about smashing a villain flat. It's about restoring a broken fighter's dignity. He helps without stealing the victory. That's heroic in a different key.
I think Larry Trent is the token that keeps Superman from becoming too abstractly noble. He can save a city, yes, but he can also be the unseen hand letting one washed-up man stand straight again. That scale shifting is rare.
So if the question is best hero, Superman's claim is this. He established that extraordinary power in comics could be directed toward ordinary human wrongs. That's a mighty standard to beat.
If Superman is public daylight, Batman is private dread. And there's a strong case that 1939 needed him too. Detective 27 gives us the strange newcomer. Detective 31 and 32 give us the monk saga. Hypnosis, castles, wolves, giant gorilla, silver bullets. Detective 33 gives us the wound, the murdered parents, and the vow. Suddenly, this isn't just a costumed eccentric. It's grief, weaponized.
Yeah, he's the other side of the coin. Superman says, I can help. Batman says, I know what evil looks like in the dark. That's a useful fella to have around, even if he's not exactly Sunday school material.
And unlike Superman, Batman is investigative almost to the point of obsession. He watches, he stalks, he uses ropes, gas pellets, bat plane, bat car. He turns surveillance into heroism. That's a very modern flavor.
Then there's Sandman, whom I refuse to let get buried in this category. He's the in-between figure. Wesley Dodds by day, gas mask phantom by night. No super strength, no towering legend yet, but real atmosphere. He moves through industrial sabotage, stolen plans, airfield danger, hidden rooms. He's the mystery man as nervous system of the age.
I like Sandman a lot. Slick fedora, sleep gas, get in and get out style. But if I'm being square with myself, he feels like a terrific lane in the highway, not the whole darn road.
That's fair. Still, the rest of the field deserves brief mention. Slam Bradley is the working man bruiser, the hard-boiled foundation under Detective Comics before Batman took the covers. Sandy Keene is radio-era civic adventure, sirens, fires, dogs, quick-footed public service in miniature. Dr. Occult is the old, weird bridge, one of the protoforms from Siegel and Schuster before Superman's daylight took over.
And Dr. Occult matters because he proves the DC toolbox had room for symbols and mystery before it had a full superhero grammar. More Fun 22, especially, is a weird little flare in the dark.
All right, enough campaigning. Best hero ballot time. Don't anybody make eye contact. Done.
I have the numbers. Third place, with 15 points, Sandman, a clean bronze. All 3 ballots respected him, and that tells its own story.
15. 3 ballots, 3 third-place finishes. That's consistency. He never stole the room, but he never got left out either.
Second place, with 24 points, Batman.
Close race again. I can hear the Bat fans sharpening their letters already.
And the dizzy for Best Hero, with 27 points, goes to Superman.
Truth, justice, and the whole shooting match. Hard to beat.
He wins because he set the terms. Batman answers him. Sandman sidesteps him. But Superman defines the field everybody else is now reacting to.
Now, this is a category I'm especially fond of, because supporting characters tell you whether a strip has a world or just a costume in a vacuum. And to me, Lois Lane is the gold standard on the board. First appearance in Action 1, right beside Clark Kent, and instantly she is more than an ornament. She's a reporter with elbows. She judges Clark. She rushes into danger. She demands scoops.
And she's got grit. In that nightclub scene in Action 1, Clark acts yellow, on purpose, sure, but she doesn't know that, so she lets him have it. In Action 2, she's nearly shot as a spy in San Monte. In Action 5, she's heading straight toward the damn story in a taxi. She's always moving toward the news like a moth to a porch bulb.
What sticks for me is that Lois is not written as someone who politely waits to be informed. She investigates. And even when she gets in over her head, it's because she was pursuing the story, not because the plot needed a chair tied to a railroad track.
Pursuing the story. Exactly. Joe Shuster modeled her early look on Joanne Carter, and Siegel has admitted inspirations from actresses like Lola Lane and the hard-charging Torchy Blaine mode. You feel that newsroom electricity. She's one of the reasons Superman's civilian life works at all.
Now, hold on, because Shorty deserves a mighty loud hand here. Slam Bradley without Shorty is just one more broad-shouldered lug cracking heads. Shorty makes the strip sing. He's the panic valve, the wisecrack machine, the fella always a step from disaster. Slam is the freight train. Shorty is the whistle.
That's good. The freight train and the whistle. Shorty also gives Slam human scale. When the big man storms a room, Shorty's the one reacting like a normal citizen. Fear, complaint, bad guesses, comic squeaks. He keeps the strip from turning into pure blunt instrument.
The other nominees are worthwhile too. Julie Madison matters a great deal to early Batman because the Monk saga becomes personal through her. Commissioner Gordon is essential institutional ballast. Without him, Batman has no official world to orbit around. And Rose Psychic in Dr. Occult helps prove those earliest weird strips were building partnerships, not just lone operators.
All right then, top 5. And this one, I'll say, is closer in spirit than folks may expect. Because if Shorty ain't your cup of tea, you're probably a little allergic to joy.
Or to concussion. He absorbs a lot of those.
Ballots are in. For this category, we are only announcing the top 2. Runner-up with 24 points, Shorty.
That little rascal made the podium. Good for him.
And your dizzy for Best Supporting Character with 27 points goes to Lois Lane.
Right result. 27 says all 3 of us knew she wasn't just the girl in the strip. She was the strip's pressure gauge.
No argument here. She's got more hustle than half the heroes in the rack.
Before we get to the biggest category of the night, I want us to do something the scorecards don't always do well. Honor the stepping stones. Dr. Occult, Slam Bradley, and Sandy Keene did not carry the main trophies tonight, but they matter enormously to the shape of these comics.
Dr. Occult is the prototype shop. Secret lore, trenchcoat, then cape, then occult iconography, then hints of flight and larger stakes. More Fun, 22, in particular, has that early weird fiction electricity. You can almost watch Siegel and Schuster trying on pieces of superhero grammar before they find the red cape.
And Slam Bradley, boy, we've said it before, but I'll say it again. He helped teach Detective Comics how to move. Those early issues, then late-run numbers like 28 and 34, they're roughhouse crime strips with real snap. Slam's public, loud, and direct. He's the work gloves in the toolbox before Batman starts showing up with theatrical black lacquer.
Work gloves in the toolbox. That's one to keep. And Sandy Keene, however modest the feature, feels like a little civic pulse of the era. More Fun 36 gives us Radio Squad urgency, fire sirens, the burning warehouse, the recumbent watchman thought doomed, then the dog Broody finding him, then the rescue through smoke. It's not grand myth, but it is energetic, public-minded storytelling.
The thing I appreciate about Sandy Keene is scale. More Fun 36 isn't trying to save the planet. It's trying to save a man in a fire and catch an arsonist. In a medium racing toward capes and world-shaking menace, that grounded urgency is worth saluting.
And without features like those, you don't get the big headliners fully formed. Everybody likes to talk about first appearances like lightning from a clear sky. But comics are more like a garage band. Somebody had to make noise before the big tune arrived.
Exactly. These also-rans widen the DC toolbox. Weird occult detective, two-fisted crime bruiser, radio rescue hero. They prove the publisher, National Detective, what we loosely call DC now, didn't arrive at superhero dominance by accident. It tried lanes, it tested voices, it let the audience teach it what to keep.
Which brings us, naturally, to Story of the Year. Because that category isn't just which issue did we like, it's which issue best shows comics becoming themselves.
Beautifully put. Our ballot there is 10 stories deep. Detective Comics 27, 31, 32, 33, and 28, More Fun 36, Action Comics 13 and 19, Superman number 2A, and More Fun 22. Time to open the big file. Let's start with the Batman side of the ballot, because this is where one new feature barged into Detective Comics and changed the temperature of the whole magazine in about 6 months. Detective 27 is the obvious first stone. The case of the chemical syndicate. Commissioner Gordon at home, Bruce Wayne, the young socialite friend, murder among chemical partners, and then that weird figure of the night appears. No origin, no hand-holding, just impact.
And the final image of that first case still lands. The killer plunges into the acid, and Batman thinks it's a fitting end. That's not Superman ethics. That's pulp vigilante justice. 27 matters because it doesn't ask permission. It arrives fully strange.
Plus the cover. May 39. Batman swinging in, crook under one arm, gunman aiming from the side. That thing is a bugle call. You see it once, you know the magazine just hired a new headliner.
Then Detective 31 and 32, The Monk Saga. I'm almost inclined to count them as one long fever dream. Julie Madison under the sway of the monk, the liner to Europe, the castle on the cliff, wolves, giant gorilla, hypnotism, Dala, the batplane, the batarang beginning to act like a signature instrument. It's Batman discovering he can carry full Gothic horror.
31 is the invitation. 32 is the payoff. And the payoff is brutal. Silver bullets. Batman choosing to end a supernatural menace rather than merely handcuff a crook. That's a huge tonal declaration.
Yeah, but if I'm picking just one of the monk pair, I lean 32. Because the whole stew comes to a boil. Castle walls, wolves, Julie in danger, Batman dead set on finishing the job. It's got mustard.
And then there's Detective 33, which may be the most important single Batman story in the run, even if it's not the wildest adventure. The issue gives us the parents in the alley, the vow at the graveside, the years of training, and the bat through the window. That origin recasts everything around it. Suddenly, the costume is not gimmick, but answer.
I keep coming back to one token there. The alley. Once you see the alley, Batman's whole year changes shape. 27 becomes the beginning of a mission. 31 becomes a man channeling grief into nightmare. 33 gives emotional weight to the silhouette.
And that happened fast. That's what amazes me. From May 39 to November 1st, cover dated 33, he goes from, hey, here's a bat fella, to, oh, this is a foundational hero with a wound and a code. That's one heck of a sprint.
Which is why so many Batman stories hit this ballot at once. 27 is first impact. 31 and 32 are range and atmosphere. 33 is meaning. No wonder the feature swallowed so much oxygen.
Now let's bring Superman back in, because Action 13 and Action 19 ain't here by accident. Action 13, June 1939, is the cab racket story, and that one just hums. Independent cabbies getting squeezed, windshields smashed, drivers beat up, syndicate muscle leaning on the little guy. Clark sniffs it out. Superman starts busting up the works, and before long the whole city's being shown exactly who the rotten apples are.
The image I can't shake from 13 is that red train cover, and then, inside, the racket itself. What sounds small on paper, taxi monopolization, turns into a civic morality play. That is Jerry Siegel at his best. He takes a local injustice and treats it like something a hero should care about as much as a meteor from space.
And the fact that it's a cab combine matters. City transportation, public movement, everyday working stiffs. That's not abstract villainy. That's organized pressure on ordinary labor. Superman steps in not because the case is glamorous, but because it's unfair.
Then Action 19, The Purple Plague. December 39, streets clogged with death wagons. The Daily Star screaming, Purple Plague grips Metropolis. Professor Henry Travers and the so-called ultra-humanite tangled up in a medical nightmare. Superman racing from hospitals to laboratories to airships. Boy, that one's got everything except a brass band.
Purple Plague grips Metropolis. That headline panel is one of the year's most memorable things, because suddenly, Superman's strength isn't enough by itself. He's facing fear, contagion, crowd panic, scientific arrogance. It's a physical hero confronted with something nearly invisible.
And unlike some plague stories, 19 keeps the villainy human. Travers wants his name eternal. Ultrahumanite wants domination through fear. The disease becomes a tool of ego. That's why the story lasts in the mind.
Now, on the non-caped crime side, Detective 28 and 34 keep Slam Bradley in the race. 28 is a sharp reminder that before Batman fully became the magazine, Slam could still deliver clean, fast action. Better pacing, stronger cause and effect, and that sense that the whole city is a wrestling ring.
And 34, June 40 if I recall the cover date right, though the material's still our backward-looking window. Shows the old strip still had gas in the tank. We got inheritance, fake legacies, a poisoned tale, or at least the suspicion of it. Hidden passages, Shorty asleep after a feed, and Slam stomping through one last spooky house routine like a batter who still knows how to drive in runs.
What matters there is not that Slam beats Batman head-to-head. He doesn't. It's that Detective 34 proves the older crime strip DNA did not become worthless overnight. There was still room for a hard-boiled, comedic, room-to-room mystery.
So our intermediate picture is getting interesting. Batman dominates the emotional and atmospheric lane. Superman owns the social and spectacular lane. Slam reminds us where the whole magazine came from. We are not tallying yet, but the board is getting crowded. The last set of contenders are the stories that widen the vocabulary. More Fun 22 is Dr. Occult, Siegel and Schuster in proto-hero weird fiction mode. We only have a few pages in the surviving look at it tonight, but what pages? Senator Barrows, a faked haunting, the governor, Clark-like investigatory drive before Clark is Clark, and that old ghost detective machinery of revelation.
What makes More Fun 22 special is not polish. It's possibility. You can see the creators experimenting with hidden identities, staged fear, public corruption, and a larger-than-life investigator who will not leave bad men alone. It's primitive compared with Superman, but primitive the way an early engine is primitive, full of the future in rough form.
And More Fun 36, our Sandy Keene candidate, wins on pep. Warehouse fire. Radio car screaming to the scene. Sandy racing in. Broody the dog finding the unconscious watchman. Then that whole business with the pyromaniac and the poor sap Larry trying to stay straight. It's not grand opera, but it's sure-footed.
You know what I like about 36? The dog. Broody isn't just cute decoration. He finds the recumbent man when everyone else thinks the fellow is doomed. That concrete detail, the dog making the rescue possible, sticks in the listener's mind far more than a vague, and then they saved him.
Exactly. Broody is the token. He turns a routine fire rescue strip into something you can recount over coffee the next day. The dog found him in the smoke. That's memorable construction.
Now, here's where I'll be the heel in the room. In a year like 39, I still lean action over mood. I admire Dr. Occult's atmosphere. I like Sandy Keene's civic snap. But when I'm deciding story of the year, I want impact. I want something that hits you like a drum major turning the corner.
I hear that, but mood can be impact. Detective 31 and 32 live on mood. Sandman lives on mood. That man's whole rise depends on it. A story can change the medium not because it ran the fastest, but because it taught readers a new feeling.
I'm between you two. Mood without forward motion is perfume. Action without atmosphere is a fist fight in a blank room. The stories we're really discussing for the top spots have both. Action 19 has plague panic and propulsion. Detective 33 has origin solemnity and forward drive. Even Action 13 has civic outrage, wrapped in slam-bang pacing.
That's fair. And it means the wild cards probably won't take the whole thing, but they're not dead weight. They keep the year from feeling one note.
Which is the right note to strike before the final vote. We've talked Batman, Superman, Slam, Dr. Occult, Sandy Keene. Time now to rank the 10 and live with the consequences. Gentlemen, this is the big one. Story of the year. 10 nominees, rank your top 5 only. First place 10 points, second 7, third 5, fourth 3, fifth 1. Quietly now. Robert is staring into the middle distance like a man choosing between the flag and his mother.
That's because you loaded the ballot, Simon. You put Action 19 and Detective 33 in the same foot race and told me to pick one. That's crueler than beaning a batter in a spring exhibition.
I finished mine. That either means I'm decisive or wrong.
Very well. The papers are in. I have the totals, and we will reveal them from 5th place to champion. 5th place with 5 points. Action Comics number 13, The Cab Racket Story.
Good. It belongs on the board. Even if it didn't crack the upper crust, that story's too alive to miss the count altogether.
4th place with 10 points. Detective Comics number 32, The Climax of the Monk Saga.
10 points exactly. That says one of us loved it, another respected it, and the third maybe found it a little too batty, even for Batman.
Too batty for Batman ought to be printed on a poster.
3rd place with 12 points. Detective Comics number 27, Batman's First Appearance.
There it is, the debut medal. Makes sense. Historic as all get out, even if later issues deepen the fella.
2nd place with 22 points. Action Comics number 19, The Purple Plague.
22. That's a monster number, which means the winner had to be something special.
It is. Your Dizzy for Story of the Year with 25 points goes to Detective Comics number 33, Batman's Origin.
I can live with that. I went another way on my own ballot, but I can live with it. 33 changes the whole strip in retrospect.
And that's why it wins. Not because it is the noisiest, but because it rekeys everything around it. The alley, the vow, the training, the bat at the window. Once those are in place, Batman's earlier stories gain spine, and his later ones gain gravity.
Yes, Action 19 may be the better social panic story, and Detective 27 may be the cleaner bolt from the blue. But Detective 33 matters in the larger direction of comics, because it proves a hero can be defined not just by costume and action, but by trauma, memory, and purpose. That feels very much like the road into 1940.
In other words, the comics are growing bones. Bigger heroes, stronger villains, and now, inner lives too. Even if I still think Superman's plague story could whip it in a fair alley fight.
Every category with you ends in an alley fight.
That's because alleys sort things out, George.
So there we are, looking back over 1939 from the vantage of July 24th, 1940. The shape seems clearer than it did while we were wading through the stacks. Comics spent that year moving from experiment toward identity. Superman proved the superhero could be a public moral force. Batman proved darkness, grief, and theatrical fear could thrive in the same young medium. Sandman, Slam Bradley, Dr. Occult, Sandy Keene, they each held a necessary tool while the craft box was still being assembled.
And the villains got better too. Ultra Humanite, Dr. Death, the Monk. Not just one-panel crooks with derby hats, but recurring threats, scientific brains, gothic nightmares, men with motives larger than take the till and run. That's a serious step.
And the storytelling got more confident. Better covers, bolder layouts, stronger hooks. You can feel the publishers learning what sells at the newsstand and what sticks in the craw after supper. Less fumbling, more punch. Or maybe I should say, more wallop. Nice, clean wallop.
Which leads us to our next regular program. We are finally stepping into 1940 proper with Superman. But we're going to slow things down a little. There's simply too much good material there to gallop over in one night. So our next episode will be Superman in 1940, Part 1.
Fine by me. Give the big guy room to breathe. If 1939 built the machine, 1940 looks like the year they start giving it chrome.
And since this is a serial program, we'd love to hear where you think we got it wrong. If you believe Action 19 was robbed, or Batman won fair, or Shorty ought to have taken the whole station hostage till we crowned him, write us.
Yes, send your letters to distinguishedcomicsradio@gmail.com. Our editor still insists that address is entirely normal somewhere in the future, Mr. Moore keeps hinting at. And until proven otherwise, we shall continue trusting the postal miracles of time.
If Mr. Moore really is out there in tomorrow, tell him Robert Reed says, keep the Cubs in mind when he places any long-term wagers.
And tell him if he sends back any more voting results, he can at least include cigars.
For Robert Reed, for George Wilson, and for all of you listening out there with a stack of comics on the arm of the chair, this is Simon Carver saying thank you for spending the evening with Distinguished Comics Radio. Keep your dimes handy, keep your eyes open, and keep faith with the stories that still know how to stand up straight in uneasy times.
This is Robert Reed saying good night, keep your chin up, and don't let the bad actors run the joint.
George Wilson. Good night, and watch the rooftops.
You've been listening to KDCR, New York, Distinguished Comics Radio. Good night, friends.